Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet for the PlayStation 4. This title was sent to me by Bandai Namco so that I could give it a look and tell you guys my opinions on it. And I'm well aware I'm quite a bit late when it comes to making a video about this game. That's because I've been really busy these past couple of weeks, so I'm sorry about that, but let's get into it. Now, the first thing I got to talk about when it comes to Sword Art Online games is that I am somewhat biased towards this particular franchise because not only I enjoy the anime, I've also enjoyed the previous games that came out about Sword Art Online, which, for those of you who don't know, the previous games were essentially JRPGs where they kind of simulate the MMORPG nature of Sword Art Online. And even though most of the game itself is offline, there are some co-op things that you can do with your friends. But to be completely honest, I spend most of my time playing in single player because I kind of feel that is where the meat of the content is for most of the Sword Art Online games. But I do tend to enjoy them quite a bit. I like min-maxing my characters, fiddling around with the different systems that they introduce in these games, so I tend to enjoy this particular franchise, is what I'm getting at. And when it comes to Fatal Bullet, I've actually been pretty curious at getting my hands on it because since I played it at Gamescom, I was actually surprised as to how much of a departure it was when it came to the gameplay from the previous entries in the franchise, which, to be completely honest, were not that different from each other. Sure, they gave you a couple of new features here and there in between titles, but the gist of the gameplay was essentially the same, whereas this one actually looked like it was going to be significantly different. And it is, and that is a good thing. Now, when it comes to the story, and I do feel that I should talk about the story at this point because some of you guys are going to be like, so do I need to have watched the anime to enjoy this game? Do I need to have played the previous titles to enjoy this game? And in my opinion, you don't, because usually each title has like their own story and they find ways to tell you about the backgrounds of each of the different characters, or at least give you a vague idea of how each character behaves in the world. A lot of the characters that you will find in the Sword Art Online games are actually original characters. These are characters that were not featured in the anime, and some of the characters that will show up in Sword Art Online that they pulled from the anime are going to be a little bit different story-wise from what you expect, because essentially when they did the very first Sword Art Online game, they kind of veered off at a certain section in the story that I will not talk too much about, just in case you haven't watched the anime or whatever. But suffice to say, there's a pretty meaningful event in Sword Art Online, pretty much the ending of the first season. And that event takes a different split when it comes to the very first Sword Art Online game. And all of the other games assume that as canon, okay? So the story itself is going to be different, even though the characters are going to be familiar and they are going to behave in familiar patterns, and you're all even going to see certain story arcs and certain interactions that are going to feel very familiar to the anime itself, but they're still going to be from that veered off direction when it comes to the story. And I know that probably sounds a little bit more complicated than I really intended to, but basically what I mean to say is you don't have to watch the anime and you don't have to play the previous games to enjoy this one. Now, when it comes to the story and just the way in which events take place in Sword Art Online games, there is something that sets me a little bit, and it's that whole harem thing. So some people will get really into the whole harem aspects of Sword Art Online, and other people are just not going to be into it at all. Essentially, at all times, every character is going to be saying how amazing your character is. Regardless if they're female or male, like, your character is always going to be the most amazing thing. Everyone is going to praise you. Everyone is going to want to have your babies. That's just the way that it usually goes with Sword Art Online. But having said that, in the previous entries of Sword Art Online, you essentially played as Kirito. Even if you customized your character, you were still Kirito for everybody in the game. Sure, you could name it a different thing, you could completely change his facial features, change his hair, but ultimately you were still playing as Kirito. When it comes to Fatal Bullet, you are actually playing an original character. You create a character and you have your own story. However, having said that, you can have Kirito in your party, as well as you can also have Asuna, Sinon, Lisbeth, pretty much any character that you can think of from the anime. If they were featured in plenty of episodes, most likely they will be able to join your party, and you can then go out on adventures with them as you go through the game itself. Now, before we get on to the gameplay portion of Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, let's talk a little bit about the visuals, which, to be completely honest, is one of my biggest problems with the game. Not the visuals per se, because I actually think the visuals are pretty competent. You can pretty much play the game. It doesn't look amazing according to today's standards, if I'm to be completely honest. Then again, none of the Sword Art Online games ever really looked that amazing. You don't really play these games for the graphics, right? You play these games for the fan service, you play these games for these characters, you play these games usually because you enjoy the anime and you want to spend more time in that particular universe. At least I know that that is why I do it. So when it comes to visuals, I think they're okay, and I actually think they do a good job of portraying the Gun Gale Online universe, so to speak, which is actually an aspect of Sword Art Online that I've always wanted to explore more, because all of the previous games never really went into Gun Gale territory, right? They even brought some of the characters that Kirito only meets during Gun Gale Online, but then they put those characters into the other locations of Sword Art Online, which is always something that I've always wanted to explore more of Gun Gale Online, which to me was one of the more interesting seasons of the show. And I know it's probably, I'm probably in a big minority here, but I really enjoyed the Gun Gale Online arc, so to speak. So I've always wanted to play more of that. And I think the visuals do a good job of representing that particular universe. However, the big problem that I have here is the performance. And it's like, I've been talking with Globku about this, because Globku, you guys probably know Globku from Magical Noob. I sometimes do videos with him and stuff. And he was telling me that the performance was fine for him. And I don't know if it's my console or something, but this is the only game that I've had like differing reports, so to speak. The game runs at 30 FPS, which to start, let's be completely honest, with visuals like these, this game should run at 60 FPS on a PlayStation 4 Pro. No problem. At least that's my opinion, particularly if I take into comparison with other titles that I play on the console. I really feel this title should run at 60 FPS, okay? And it doesn't. So that's a bit of a problem for me, but I'm fine. It's okay. 30 FPS is fine. I'm not some kind of elitist that's going to be like, oh my god, 60 FPS needs to be... No, it's fine. 30 FPS is fine. But the problem is, even at 30 FPS, there is fluctuation in the frames, which sometimes did affect my gameplay. At least me personally, me aiming, and I just felt like the frames were a problem. At least I felt like that, and I do hope that they optimize the game quite a bit. At least that's just the way how I feel. I know that probably is going to be one of those things where your mileage may vary, because like I said, Globku has had no such problems, so I don't know if it's just me. Either way, the performance is a bit of an issue for me. Now, when it comes to sound, the sound is pretty competent. I wouldn't say that is something revolutionary, like the game sounds fine. The Japanese voiceovers sound fine as well. It's pretty much, I think it might even be the same actors that we've seen on the show, so that's all pretty good to me. However, there are a couple of inconsistency when it comes to some sound effects. Something that I've definitely noticed when I started playing with shotgun is that the hits from my shotgun were way louder than pretty much any other weapon that I had used before, so I thought that was a little bit weird. But other than that, I haven't really seen any inconsistencies when it comes to sound. Now, when we get to the gameplay itself, that is where this game definitely shines the most, because like I said at the start of this video, this was one of the biggest departures from the previous entries in the franchise, because this game plays like a third-person shooter JRPG, which I know, it's kind of weird. Your character has stats. These stats will improve the types of guns that you can handle. They will also improve how much damage you deal, how fast you are at handling the weapons, how fast you are at moving through the battlefield, how much you can inflict critical hits. So you have that aspect of it, and at the same time, you have the aiming and shooting aspects of a third-person shooter. And they actually do this in a very interesting way. There's this thing called assist mode, which is pretty much on by default. And what that does is basically anything that enters sort of your targeting reticule, your character will be able to automatically shoot it by pressing R2. And I know you guys are like, what are you talking about? Aimbot? You got aimbot, Rurikhan? Is that what you got? And it's like, in a way, yes. But the reason you have that particular aimbot is because, for one, if you've watched Gun Gale Online, you know you're going to be able to see like that targeting reticule that they had in the show, which was pretty cool. It was a good representation as to how you could do those kinds of mechanics in a VR MMO, so to speak. And that whole thing is represented in there as well. So some of your stats will be able to influence how far your shots will spread in that circle, and you will see how the circle increases the more you fire, depending on whether you have an automatic weapon, semi-automatic weapon, so that's all going to influence how your playstyle works. And it's like the reason they do that is because that means you can be running and gunning a lot of the time if that is your chosen playstyle. However, if you want to be someone who wants to take precise shots, that's just the thing. The system still allows you to do that. You can aim using L2, and there is a massive advantage to doing so, because as you guys will see in the gameplay that is going on in the background right now, you guys will notice that whenever I actually aim my shots and I hit critical spots in the monsters, the number difference is abysmal. Like, you can be going from hitting with your auto aim mode, from hitting for like 96 or 100 or maybe 200 depending on how hard you are hitting a certain mob, to hitting like 2000. Okay, that is the difference between you actually aiming your weapon or just spamming shots. So it does reward players for taking those manual shots, which means you can take the playstyle of the run and gun, or you can take the more tactical playstyle of actually aiming your gun and taking your time and shooting the crap out of everything by manually aiming. So that is really cool, and like I said, this is the freshest that it's felt when it comes to playing a Sword Art Online game. Then another really cool feature that they've added is a grappling hook. They give you this very early in the game, and it really adds a degree of verticality where you can climb up these walls and you can like maneuver, and you can even aim the grappling hook a couple of meters in front of you to the ground, and your character basically grappling hooks onto the ground, then moves there, and use that as some way to position yourself better. Maybe you're using a shotgun, you need to get a little bit closer. Maybe you're using a laser sword, which is also an option, by the way. As a matter of fact, you're probably seeing me use a setup very similar to the setup that Kirito used in Gun Gale Online. The reason it happened like that is just because I picked up a really good sword and a really good handgun, and that's just how it turned out. I didn't intend it to copy that. As a matter of fact, I plan on using pistol and shotgun, because those so far seem to be the two weapons that I really seem to get along with. But it felt very good, the way that the gameplay plays out, at least in my opinion, other than, like I said, the couple of performance issues that I've had. It feels very nice, and it feels very adequate to what you witness in the series. Like, it feels very familiar. There's even those red lines that you get in the anime series. Whenever someone was aiming at you, you could see a red line, and you can see that in the game as well. So again, it feels very immersive if you've seen the series and if you like that particular part of the series. Now, having said that, I should also mention that the pacing of the game is a little bit all over the place when it comes to the balance between visual novels as well as actual gameplay, because for those of you that don't know, Sword Art Online games have always had a big portion of them be about visual novels where the characters interact with each other and it kind of develops the background of certain characters. But, you know, over all of the games that I've played of Sword Art Online, that kind of got a little stale, and it hasn't improved much from what I've played in Fatal Bullet so far. Like I said, a lot of the times it's just a bunch of characters telling you, oh my god, Rurikhan, you're so amazing, you're so lucky, you're so this, you're so that. But it does kind of let you know how each of the characters is portrayed in the story of the game. Like, you can see that Sinon is a more serious character who's got some problems. You can see that Kirito is the try-hard dude that he is, and you can see that Klein just wants to get laid at any cost, even if it is with AIs in this particular game. That's how far he's willing to go. But having said that, the thing that I was talking about when it came to the pacing is that I feel that they tend to jam-pack you with a lot of visual novel stuff in between sending you back out into the field for some more gameplay. In my opinion, it should be like, look, you get one bit of visual novel or maybe 2 bits of visual novel, and then send me back out on to do a quest. Even if it's something boring, just like send me out to kill 2 more dudes, 3 more dudes. Break up the pacing a little more. Like, I was actually playing the game earlier. I did just a live stream with no commentary on my secondary channel, and there was this moment where there was just like friggin' 10 visual novel cutscenes back to back. You're talking like just straight up 40 to 45 minutes of just like characters talking to each other where nothing really relevant to the story is even taking place. It's just exposure to character background, which I know it is important and it does set the tone for a lot of things, but Jesus Christ, give me some actual gameplay in between all of those visual novel moments, please. It's kind of always been like this in Sword Art Online games. I still enjoy the games themselves despite it being like this, but I really wish this is something they would improve moving forward, to be completely honest. But yeah, these are my two main complaints when it comes to Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet. It is the balance of visual novel stuff versus actually sending you out into the field to do fun stuff, shooting enemies and all that kind of activities, and also a couple of the performance issues that I have. And I understand that this is the first time that this particular team is using the Unreal Engine, and I do have to say, for their first time using it, I feel that the gameplay and the feeling of the game, like the feel that they were going for the whole Gun Gale Online feel, I think that they nailed it. If only they could just like squeeze a little bit more performance out of the game, like I would be so much more happy with it. But other than that, it's like it's a Sword Art Online game through and through. If you've played them in the past, you know what they're about. If you haven't played them in the past, you're watching gameplay in the background, so probably you've figured out if it is the kind of game that you would enjoy or not. There are plenty of systems to dive into and min-max your character in different ways. Like, I'm still fairly early on in the game at this point, but I can already see that I'm going to be spending quite a bit of time playing Sword Art Online because I just tend to enjoy immersing myself in these worlds, so I'm definitely going to be playing some more. What do you guys think about it? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.